All right, we are live. I'm just going to double check this isn't my group, y'all, because settings were a little different than usual, and I wanted to post to my feed. And I want to make sure we are in the right place because we've got a juicy conversation today. I feel like this is one that is beneficial for you, whether you have a small audience or a big audience. We're not talking today about the fact that you don't need to grow an audience for every business. However much money you want to make, that is something we're focusing on. But I do want to talk about the secrets to making 6-7 figures, yes, even $1 million with an audience of 350 people or less. Okay, cool. I can see myself. We are live. Some announcements before we dive into today's conversation. I don't know who watched the debate last night. Maybe you saved yourself some of the anguish from not watching it. Hubs and I watched it. I am just going to remind everyone, give everyone a friendly reminder from a childless cat lady to make sure you are registered to vote and to make sure you have a plan to vote. I cannot tell you how to vote. That is not my business. That's one of your rights as a human in the US, but I will really strongly advocate for you to make sure you register to vote. You have a plan to vote. It really matters. So that's my piece today. You can DM me if you want to talk about it more. Vote.org will give you everything you need to vote. So I want to make sure I am doing my part to let people know to do that. Do your part as well. Let's make sure we're getting more people to vote. Other announcement is, what was my other announcement? Other announcement is we have a giveaway for today's live stream. We always do a giveaway. I love having you live here. I want to encourage you to be live for these conversations. I get to answer your questions that way. I have a conversation. Selfishly, it's more fun for me, but also I know there's so many places online that you can be consuming, and it honestly means the world to me to get to hang with you, to get to share this with you, that you would be here and want to listen, learn, have a conversation with me outside of my one-on-one calls with my clients. This is like my favorite thing to do. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Today's giveaway, if you're live, say hi. Anytime, emoji, anything counts. We are giving away, you can go to my website, any of my done for you products, anything essentially outside of one-on-one coaching, you can pick and we will send that to you. I have a 6-week sales course. I have a couple of workshops, one around millionaire money mindset blueprint, one around hosting sales calls. There's a couple different things there for you, one around mindset and mindset blocks and unlocking those, so you can have your pick and we will send that over to you. Okay, now let's dive into, I realized I did not get myself water today before our live, so hopefully my throat holds up. Coaching calls, I'm used to listening, not talking as much. So, but we're gonna roll with this. Okay, so today's conversation, this is one I feel like I've written posts about this. We haven't had a live on this in quite some time, and I have some things I really want to dive into specifically around the strategy around this. I don't want to just tell you can make money with a smaller audience. I also don't want to give you the impression that it's not important to focus on audience growth, because that's not true at all. But I do see how we get things so twisted in the online space, and it's really easy to start focusing on the wrong things that don't make sense for what you are selling and that don't help you reach your revenue goals. If you're on my email list, you got the email for this. One of the things I said, I think we've all heard this at this point, we've heard about the influencer, and no shade to this influencer. I think it just helps demonstrate what we're talking about. The influencer who had 2 million followers and she wasn't able to sell 36 t-shirts. And I'm going to just read this because I think this is helpful. Natalie Ellis, who is the CEO of Boss Babe, who has I believe, multi-million, I think she's made a gazillion $1 million at this point. So, she really she knows what the heck she's talking about. She has the data here. She wrote sharing her recent launch numbers, and I think this is just so important to hear. I'm going to read this. She broke it down and said, what you'll notice immediately from her launch numbers, because they had improved launch numbers, is that last year we sent more than double the amount of leads. So more audience, more leads, yet we made more revenue this year. So what that means is they made more money in their launch with half the number of leads. And I know I also talk about how many clients I have who have made 6 or 7 figures with audiences of less than 500. I have a client who has made over $1 million with an audience of less than 350. I made my first 6 figures with, I think I had less than 300 people on my email list. My first multi-6 figures, my first 365K cashier with, I think I still had less than 500 people on my email list at that point, and definitely less than 1,000. Maybe I had 1,000 people in this Facebook group. So I want to talk about this because, again, this is not a conversation to say that growing an audience isn't important. I think we want to remember, all of us as business owners, we need to have a holistic strategy, a holistic marketing strategy that is a customer journey, that we are always focusing on growing our audience. However, what I see for so many of us, especially if, you're getting into reels, or I don't know, you're just starting and you're hearing no shade to anyone, but you're hearing certain influencers talk about the importance of email list growth, or you come into my group and you see that we have 17,000 people in this group and you hear about the revenue I make and the revenue my clients make. It is very easy to latch on to just a certain part of someone's strategy and to think that is what you need to focus on to get the same results, right? And so then I think what is really, like, it makes sense in our brain. I think it's logical in some ways to think, well, then if I want to make a 6-figure a year, if I want to make $1 million, and I'm seeing these different influencers, they all have big audiences, right? And the more people you have, the more money you make, right? That's the logic our brain makes. It is very easy for us to think my role, my job is just to focus on audience growth at all expense. And what I want to say here is, yes, we always want to focus on audience growth. It's not that you need to have people in front of you to sell to, but you can make a lot of money with a smaller audience. Like Natalie Ellis was saying, they had fewer leads and made more money. And so bigger is not always better. And sometimes when we are it takes a different strategy to grow your audience than it does to make sales. And so what I want to talk about today is, if your goal is sales, if your goal is revenue, I want to talk about how you can make 6 or 7 figures, $1 million with an audience of 350 people or less. And I have the receipts to prove that this is true, because I've literally supported clients who go from 0 to $1 million with an audience of less than 350. So this is not me talking out my ass or saying this is to make you feel good. I have just seen this to be true. But we have to shift the focus then, because then the focus, if that is your goal, if you have a smaller audience and you want to monetize that, we have to shift our thinking out of how do I grow my audience at any expense. Your goal is no longer audience growth. Your goal is monetizing a small audience, and that requires a different strategy. If I wanted to blow my audience up to 1 million people on Instagram right now, I would be posting very, very, very different content. I would need to sell something very different. I would have a very different strategy. And so again, I just want us to hear that they just require different strategies. And if you're hopping on live, I'm kind of just getting started. You can catch the beginning of this, but if you say hi, I do have a giveaway. You can pick anything from my website outside of one-on-one coaching, but any of my Done For You products, you'll be entered to win that. Okay, so we're going to talk about, after my little rant there, the 3 key elements you need, capital NEED, if you want to scale to 6 or 7 figures with a tiny audience. Why bigger isn't always better, and the bonus or the benefit to your bank account if you have a smaller audience, and the times you do want to prioritize audience growth to avoid slowing down sales. Because again, I want to keep prefacing this live stream is not to say it's bad to have a large audience. We're mad at viral reels. We're mad at audience growth. That's not what we're saying. But I do want you to hear, again, I'm going to keep saying this, it is a very, very different strategy to massively blow up your audience than it is a strategy that is required to effectively sell to a smaller audience to generate 6 or 7 figures. They're 2 different strategies, 2 different approaches. And we want to know what our goals are. So let me just see here. Hey, Chrissy, nice to have you on. Hi. Okay, and you'll just let me know if you have questions, throw them at me. So I think the first thing we want to remember, if you want to, or think about, if I was coaching you on this is what I would be thinking about. And again, I'm just going to preface this again. I have clients who do all different things. I have one client whose entire goal is to grow their audience because they make their revenue based on traffic, based on audience. So we are taking a completely different strategy than I'm talking about today. So I want you to filter this through, because I'm not coaching everyone on this live stream one-on-one. I really want you to think about your business, your goals. That's why it's so important to know your business and what you're currently focused on. Otherwise, we start seeing what people are doing, right? And it's not that that's a bad strategy. It's not that that's bad. It's just not going to get you the goals that you want. So if we want to monetize a smaller audience, the first thing I would coach you on, the first thing I would want you to look at is going back to basics and taking a look at your offer. What I find we need to remember is the math has to math. And so if you have a $37 offer, or if you even have a high ticket course, but it is a one-time purchase, it's just going to be, I never want to say anything's impossible, but it's just going to be really tough to even make 6 figures with a small audience. I'm just going to do the math on this. A 50% conversion rate is pretty much not a thing. But let's just say you had an audience of 350 people and you did have a 50% conversion rate, which just isn't a thing. But we're just going to pretend that you are the unicorn of all unicorns, right? And you have a $37 offer. That's $6,475. Now that is nothing to sneeze at, but that is your entire revenue, right, that you are going to make. You need to make over $8,000 per month to reach a 6-figure year. So if we're looking at, I want to make 6 or 7 figures with a smaller audience, what you're saying, if you have a $37 offer, is I have to be the unicorn of all unicorns, and the math still won't math. Similarly, if you had, let's say you had a course that was $1,000, and let's just say you had an epic 10% conversion rate, and everybody in your audience was paying attention. Usually that 10% conversion rate is on the people who are showing up for your marketing. But let's just pretend all 350 people in your audience showed up for your conversion event. So we have 350 people. 10% of that is 35 people. So that's $35,000 if you have a $1,000 product. But that's $35,000 total, right? For the entire year if you have one product and there's nothing else to sell them into. And so I'm just saying the math here is because this is how I see clients come to me, they hire me, and they make themselves so wrong because they're actually getting incredible results. It's just the math doesn't math for what they want to make and the audience size they have and the strategy they're using. And so the first thing we want to look at is if you have a smaller audience and you want to make 6 or 7 figures per year, I really want to invite you to go back to basics and to look at how can you focus on having an offer that allows you to create reoccurring revenue that is ideally a high ticket offer. Now this is, again, I have clients who don't sell high ticket offers. I have supported clients, one of my clients who scaled to $1 million did so without a high ticket offer at all. So I don't want this to be like high ticket is the only way to make money. In fact, two of my clients who scaled to $1 million, one had a mix of high ticket and low ticket. So I don't like, this isn't like high ticket is in, low ticket is out, vice versa. It's not that noise at all. It's how can you be strategic with the goals you have and what is going to give you the best opportunity to reach those goals with what you're working with. So if you have a smaller audience, I would invite you to think about a high ticket offer that allows you to set yourself up with reoccurring revenue. So meaning it's not a one-time purchase, right? It's not a one-time high ticket course. Maybe it's one-on-one coaching or a one-on-one consulting offer. Maybe it's a mastermind. Maybe it's a group program. It's something that someone is going to continue to give you those payments at a high ticket price point. I feel like this is Captain Obvious stuff. But I also know that it's just, again, it's so easy when we're in business and we're seeing what other people are doing. And so just made $1 million doing X, Y, and Z, right? And we just look to, oh my gosh, I'm not getting the results I want. What are they doing? How do I do that as well? And we kind of miss the forest for the trees. And so one is not better than the other, but if you have a smaller audience that you want to monetize, the math just has to math. And this is also how you keep yourself out of making yourself feel like shit. Because and the statistics I threw out earlier, like those are not industry standards at all. Like no, I don't know anybody who like from their audience is selling to 50% of their audience. And so I'm just saying these things to you so that you're not setting yourself up to make yourself wrong and to think you suck at what you do or that you're a failure, when it's just simply that this is just not how your business model works, and like the math again doesn't math. So I'm gonna actually jump to a different part of the conversation. We'll circle back to that. Now, this doesn't mean if you are like hell bent on like you've got a course you want to monetize, $1,000 course, I'm just making this up, or you've got a $37 offer and you're like, this is the thing that I want to sell. That's fine, right? Like this is not the conversation to say don't sell those, but the math has to math. So what that means is this is the time when really focusing on audience growth is going to be so important for you. This is when if you're my client, I'm like, that's cool. But if your audience is 300 people, the math isn't going to math. It's not that you suck. It's not that you can't sell this. It's just, this is the place we really need, like this is the problem we need to solve for. Otherwise, the thing we need to solve for is let's start with readjusting, revamping your offer so we can get you the results you want. So start there. So let me know if you have questions around that, but like that's the first thing I would think about. Now, the second thing I would think about, and this is if I'm thinking about, good portion of my roster is making multi 6 figures or again, over the 7-figure mark. We've done this with audiences, literally one of my clients is at $1 million with an audience of less than 350. I have a couple clients at the multi 6-figure mark with an audience of less than 500 people. Maybe at this point, one of them is at about 800. And again, I'll use myself as an example. I had my first 365K year from one-on-one alone with a smaller audience. Here's the next thing I would focus on strategically if that's what you want to be true. So we've got that high ticket offer that allows you to have reoccurring revenue. The next thing we have to focus on is really looking at what is the audience you're growing. So going back to what Natalie Ellis said in terms of they had half the leads than last year but made double the revenue, what that tells me is that they had better quality leads, right? That's all that tells me. It's not that like, oh, fewer leads makes you more money. That actually doesn't I don't think makes sense to any of us, right? It's that they had better quality leads. They focus on getting the right leads in over volume of leads. And so if we have a smaller audience, your job, and I'm so sorry for the background noise. My husband just came back from the gym, so there's smoothies in the background being made. But I just totally lost my train of thought. Oh, right. So with audience growth. So what we need to look at here is, again, not how do you blow up your audience, but how do we really nail your messaging, your positioning, and your marketing strategy to attract the right leads. I talk about right fit leads all the time. It's not because I think that's a cute thing to say. It is because if you have a smaller audience, the quality of your audience, the quality of your leads matters so much. I think about this on Instagram all the time because I've had a couple of reels that have gone viral. I've probably shared this in different ways, but if I have a reel that goes viral and I get a ton of new followers, and let's say the reel, I did one reel that was Taylor Swift on the treadmill and she kind of like falls, and it was a thing about this is like what it's like when you're a business owner who just like had a pop month and you basically are self-sabotaging at a Taylor Swift song. So if a ton of the followers I get are actually just Taylor Swift fans, and they're like Swifties who are 13 years old, that's cool. My audience just grew, but that is going to do zero for my business, right? That's going to do zero. I mean, I love me some 13-year-olds. I have a 13-year-old stepson, but a 13-year-old Swiftie is not hiring me as a business coach. So I'm not mad at it. It's not that that's going to hurt my business. It's not that that's going to hurt the growth and the engagement. And if I have more growth overall, right, some of those people might turn into clients, but that's just audience growth. Whereas if I know I really want to focus on selling a high ticket one-on-one offer, I want to be so drilled in and specific with my messaging, with my marketing, with my positioning, and really targeted on bringing in the right people to follow me. So I want to attract the right people, not just anybody. And again, I feel like this is one of those things I'm probably saying stuff where you're like, yeah, duck him. But I don't know that we're always so intentional around this. When I'm coaching clients, we've just got so many things going on. And a lot of times when I'm taking a look and editing their content or working on messaging, these are just some of the things I notice. We're like, oh, well, this makes total sense. It's like we're kind of speaking to someone adjacent from who you want to serve. Or what I find for a lot of my clients, you'll have to tell me if this ever comes up for you. You don't have to out yourself if you don't want to. But a lot of times I find my clients are almost speaking to like who feels like the acceptable ideal client, or like who feels safe to talk to instead of who they really want to serve or like who they're best for. It's a way of hiding in plain sight. Or I have one client, we were just talking about this. She almost does this like undercover way of marketing because she just wants to appeal to everyone. And so she doesn't really want to own certain things in her marketing. So she kind of goes undercover. It's still great marketing. It's just, it's a lot more broad in general. And so it doesn't call in as many of those right people. And so again, these are things I think are pretty logical when we hear them, but what I would be looking at is this something I'm being really intentional and focused on? If I have a smaller audience, it's not just like, oh, it's super easy if you have a small audience to make $1 million. I don't actually think that's true, but I think if you have a smaller audience, again, with that offer where the math will math, and then you're really dialed in on your messaging, on your positioning, on your marketing strategy, where you're speaking to the right people, you are attracting the right people, and you know how to warm those people up so they're not just scrolling on by. When Natalie Ellis was talking about those results, right? They had half the number of leads, double the number of revenue. I don't know what her funnel was, but just observing her work and knowing the kind of business owner she is, I bet a lot of money, and I love me some money. I respect my money quite highly. I would bet she did an excellent job of attracting the right leads and then nurturing those leads. And I think I'm going to go on a caveat for a second here. I feel like, tell me if this feels true to you. I feel like we're in this weird, like we always want to hate on things in the online space. I feel like right now, the cool thing to say is like how you don't have to like warm up leads, how you don't have to nurture them, how people will just buy from you from one post. And look, I have had people hire me from one post. I have had people come into my world and hire and buy from me very, very quickly. And I still had to do my work, right? That's because I have a very strategic funnel and ecosystem with my marketing to attract the right people and to warm those right fit people up so they understand why I'm the right person for them to hire, how I can help them solve their problems, why I'm the person they want to buy or invest through. And I'm just saying this because, again, I hear this noise online and I think it's just really confusing and misleading, and I think it makes people feel that they're doing shit wrong. And then if you feel like you're doing shit wrong, right, then you go throw money at this solution that's like people are doing that for marketing. And so I just want to normalize like this is the normal process, especially if you sell high ticket. And then Chrissy, I want to see your comment. But if you sell a high ticket offer, again, look, there are outliers to every situation. I sell a high ticket one-on-one coaching offer. I've literally had people see one post, one Instagram story, book a consultation and hire me. And they still had to see one post that was very specific, very dialed in, speaking to them directly, right? That they had to be in the right exact spot. I still had to like nail that. And they still booked a call with me. And a call is a pretty big nurture tool to warm someone up, right? That all still had to happen for one post to sell them on me, because the general rule of thumb is if you have a high ticket offer, which if we want to monetize a smaller audience, generally, like for the math to work, right, we want to have a higher ticket offer. The higher ticket our offer, the more know, like, and trust someone needs to feel ready to buy. And generally, the more touch points they need. Now, this doesn't have to mean 6 months in your funnel. This can be, like I just said, a really dialed in post and a 45-minute call, right? That can collapse a timeline. Or it can mean they go through, they land on a post and they go to my website and they binge. I have hundreds of live streams, right? They could binge a bunch of live streams, right? That builds, that warms them up. But we do still need something there. The more money we're asking from someone, or the more time we're asking someone to invest, generally speaking, the more of that know, like, and trust. I just need to know, like, and trust you more if I'm spending $10,000 and spending 6 months with you than if I'm buying a $17 lip gloss. I mean, I think that's just logical. And even when I buy a $17 lip gloss, I still need to see a couple of things. I still need to understand if it's the right shade, if it's the right color, if it's gonna be hypoallergenic, if it's not toxic, right? Like there's actually still some shit I need to know. Chrissy says, definitely agree. That's so big right now and frustrates the hell out of me. Yeah, and look, I'm not hating, Chrissy, thank you for co-signing that. I'm not hating on anyone, because I think it's also nice for people to see it doesn't have to take as long as we think. I just also want to be the voice here, because I know that is also marketing, and I want to be the voice for everybody who then hears that and then thinks, I'm fucking things up in my business because people are taking more than one post, one conversation to hire me from a high ticket offer. I just want to like create a little normalization around what's true for most people in business and what's going to be true for, again, I have those results and I could go and spray them all over this group and make it seem like that's all I did, but that would just be false, because there's a lot more behind the picture. And if we're going back to how do we monetize a smaller audience, we want to be strategic. And if that's the expectation, right, like that's the expectation where we are we're putting a lot of expectation on us to be the outlier instead of what's the easiest way to monetize. You'd have to be the unicorn of unicorn, and everybody in your audience would have to be like the unicorn of unicorn for that to be the case. If you have a massive audience, right? If you have 100,000 people, statistically, you're just going to always have someone who finds one post and is ready to hire you. That's a better way to say it. Which brings me to another thing here. So I want to share one more piece that you need, and then I want to share one little like bonus point here to monetize a smaller audience. So the other thing here, so we need to have the messaging, the marketing, that strategy to attract the right people. Attracting the right people is everything, but also knowing how to warm those right people up, right? We need to take them down a customer journey. This doesn't mean it has to be for 6 months, but also if it is 6 months, I always say this to clients, it's not like one customer journey length is better than another. Once you've been in business for a certain amount of time and you have clients hiring you at any given point, it will not matter to you if someone has been in your world for 6 months that you haven't been paying attention to and they just became ready to hire you and it seems like it just became today, or if someone found you yesterday and hires you. Like it literally won't make a difference to you. So I really wouldn't make that like one is better than the other. It just is going to make a difference in terms of your expectations. If you're brand new to business, it's going to be a lot more apparent if you have a longer customer journey. But the other thing we need here is a conversion tool. So we need this anyway, but this is the place where I think we really want to focus on if you have a smaller audience and, right, we want to have the right people in there. We want to know how to warm them up, but I really want to invite you to thinking about having a very powerful conversion tool, knowing how to take new audience members, warm them up, and bring them through a conversion tool effectively. That is what makes you $1 million with 350 people in your audience. The client of mine who I'm speaking about, they came to me, they were making maybe $1,000 per month. and they did scale to about $1 million. The thing that they were excellent at is their conversion tool. Now, I personally, if you came to the Fully Booked method, you know I am a huge fan of mastering calls for your conversion tool if you have a smaller audience. Of course, you can do, master classes, challenges, right? There's so many different conversions. So a conversion tool is something that we are using. If you had a launch, it would be more that launch cycle, but it's the tool you're using to actually help convert someone. What I would say is if you want to convert a smaller audience into high ticket clients, a reoccurring offer and sales, relying on a conversion tool of a sales page alone, it's not that it's not possible. I just think it's a really big challenge that makes it harder than it needs to be. And so that's why I'm a huge fan of things like leveraging calls and getting really good at mastering those calls. Because if you can master your conversion tool, you need fewer people to be in your conversion tool, whether that is a call or a conversion event like a masterclass or challenge. If you don't know how to master that, right, you do need more people going through it. And so going back to, and part of the way you increase the potency, the conversion rate of your conversion tool is by attracting the right people and knowing how to warm them up effectively. I'm going back to Natalie Ellis as an example, just because she's a gazillionaire and she's doing this at scale. When she says we had half the number of leads and double the number of revenue in this launch, what that tells me is she got the right fit leads, she knew how to warm them up, and she nailed those conversions because she didn't need as many people, right? She knew how to bring in the right people, warm them up, and then if she can convert at a higher percentage, right, that will always crush it for you. I did a live stream earlier this year where I should have a 90, at that time it was like a 92.3, went up, whatever. My conversion rate on sales calls is, let's call it over 90%. What that means is I don't need to have 100 sales calls. What that meant at that time, I think it was like of the last 13 calls, I booked 12 of those clients into one-on-one. That meant I need 13 calls to book 12 clients. I don't even need 20 calls, right? But if let's say I had a 50% conversion rate, right, I would need to have, I think if I'm doing my math right here, I'm not a mathematician, but I think that would mean I would need 26 calls, right, to be able to book the same amount of clients. And so you can see here, if you bring in the right people, you know how to nurture them, but you can nail your conversion tool, you need fewer people to make the same or double in Natalie Ellis's case, right? Like, or my client who's making $1 million. That's what's working for them. They have a very high ticket offer with recurring revenue built in. They have nailed their messaging and positioning. They have nailed how to warm up cold people, and they have really focused on, I think the biggest thing they focused on is their conversion tool. For them, it's mastering calls. That's how and I just want to help you see, like, that's how this becomes so simple. That's how you take a small audience. That's how I would coach you, and that's how you monetize a small audience. And now what's beautiful about this is if you're doing this, that will also naturally grow your audience. You might not be the person who has 100,000 followers, but you will grow your audience, and you will grow your audience in a way that continues to support your business growth, scalability, sustainability, right? Because it's continuing to be with the right people that you know how to nurture and you know how to convert at a really high level. Now, I'm going to give you a bonus thought here. The other thing I will say, and just thinking about this client who scaled to $1 million with an audience of 350, and I'm just thinking about some other clients too who have scaled. They've doubled their revenue to multi-six figures with audiences of under 500. They're doing everything I just talked about, but the other thing they're doing really well, and I think this is just so important for us to remember and to because I think otherwise this also gets really confusing. Yes to everything I just said, but they're also really good at leveraging other audiences. They're really good at knowing how to put themselves in front of where their right fit leads are hanging out and how to use their strategy to draw them in. And so I have clients who will do this in other Facebook groups. I will have clients who will do this through public speaking. I have clients who will do this through doing like a podcast, what do we call it? Like a podcast tour where they just go balls to the wall with getting on a bunch of podcasts. I have clients who literally done this through personal networking, like reaching out to people and, asking who they knew, who they could refer them to, like literally like in WhatsApp personal networking. I've had clients do this on LinkedIn. So there's so many different ways to do this. There isn't a one size fits all. You could do this with ads, but I think what we're talking about, ads are also going to grow your audience. We're really talking about organically. All the clients I talked about here didn't use ads. This was all organic strategy. Not there's anything wrong with ads. I love me some ads where it makes sense as well. But if you have a high ticket offer with recurring revenue, you just don't need a big audience, and you don't necessarily need to spend money on ads unless you don't have another way or you don't have the time to leverage other audiences. So I'd say this is sort of the bonus tip here that I think people sometimes leave out of the equation when we talk about how to create 6 and 7 figures from a smaller audience. And the reason I want to like show you all of the pieces is because, again, otherwise you're going to hear that you just post one time and you make X amount of money, or you're going to hear like me talk about how you don't need a big audience, or I made my first 6 figures with less than 300 people on my email list. And all of that is true. And all of this is what I focused on. And part of how I was able to do that is I was also really leveraging other audiences because I didn't have my own at that point. So I was really leveraging hanging out in other Facebook groups, building relationships, networking, mastering my calls, right? So that, as much as everything we just talked about, was a big part of my strategy at that time. And so I want you to hear that, because again, otherwise we spin our wheels, or we start focusing on the wrong things, or we focus on the things that will get results if you're selling something really different. And so these are the pieces that really go into monetizing a smaller audience. Now, let me know if you have questions. Let me know if there's anything that comes up for you, because I feel like I just got super amped up around that. I did want to talk about why bigger isn't always better when you do want to prioritize audience growth, but if you do have questions, throw them at me. And same on the replay, just tag me if you're watching on the replay and you have a question around this. So real quick, I want to talk about why bigger isn't always better. I just finished reading, what's it called? Company of One. Hold on, I'm pulling up the title of this because I want to make sure I give you the right title, and it was just everything. I just thought it was such a great reminder of so many things I believe in as a business owner. Company of One. Okay, so I just finished reading Company of One. Thank you for bearing with me while I pulled that up. And what I really appreciated about this is I feel like these are things I've been talking about for years, but it just was drilled in really succinctly. And one of the things that he speaks about in Company of One is essentially how bigger isn't always better, and how often we see businesses, small businesses that scale really quickly, or companies that focus on growth at all costs. Those are actually the companies that are most likely to fail, that end up being the least profitable, that go out of business. I think, don't quote me on this, if my memory serves me correctly, I think what he was saying is that, is it something like most of, I don't know what the percentage was, but most of, like on the index 500, something like after 15 years, most of those companies will no longer be viable because they're so focused on scaling at any cost. And just what a benefit there is to focusing on small, and how much more profitable that can make us, how much more sustainable that can be, the better quality of service you can create, how this can actually be a better, more sustainable business that can stand the test of time. I'm reflecting this to you here because we're talking about making 6 and 7 figures with a smaller audience. Company of One is talking about this. If you have a high touch, high ticket, reoccurring revenue offer, and again, this is not for everyone. I have clients who they do have massive audiences and they're selling something different. So it's not to say that if that's you, that is wrong. But if you're in this live stream, my guess is you're probably on the smaller audience size, higher ticket offer. And your focus is on, building really great relationships, serving people really well. What's really beautiful about that is not only is it possible, very possible, to be wildly successful and to literally make $1 million with a small audience, but what happens then is you actually have a much lower overhead. You don't have the same expenses that are required for massive audience growth, that are required for selling something at scale. You don't have the breakdown in quality that often happens when something is sold at scale, right? There's actually quite a bit of benefit there. And so you don't water down your offers, right? The deliverability, things don't fall through the cracks. I've shared this in so many different ways, I won't overly harp on this, but I have been on the receiving end of businesses that I think honestly have just tried to scale too quickly, and they've scaled themselves out of the very thing that made them successful in the first part, and I ended up having kind of a shitty experience as the client, and they lost me. as a client, right? And I've seen businesses struggle. I've seen businesses in our online space. I've now been a coach for 10 years, in business for 8.5. I've seen so many businesses have a high peak and then crash and burn and leave our space. And part of it is, I think, it burnout, right, from chasing these big things and scalability. Part of it, I think, is that they're not always as profitable as they seem. Not that they can't be. And part of it is, I think, a lot of times when you grow so quickly, and it's sort of like the focus is growth at all costs instead of profitability at all costs, instead of service at all costs, instead of what actually feels good to me at all costs, your offers get watered down. Your deliverability goes down, the quality goes down, things fall between the cracks. I just had an experience with something recently where this happened, where I was like, things keep falling through the cracks in this thing I'm paying for. And I think it's frankly because they're growing too quickly. And what's sneaky about this is, if you're growing really quickly, and look, there's nothing bad with fast growth, but what I'm talking about is chasing that fast growth and thinking that that is the way to success, where it's like fast growth at all costs and all expense. It's not bad if you just grow and you have a big business. I want to be very clear here on the nuance. But what I find is really interesting about this is, when you're having that first growth, you won't notice the fallout until usually months down the road, because it takes a second, right? Because you have all of that influx of sales, of people, of things. And while things are breaking down behind the scenes, usually that's something that'll hit you 3-6 months down the road, sometimes a year down the road. And I think what is then confusing, because I've had people hire me who are in this place, is we usually just think when something breaks in our business, it's because of what's happening currently. We're sort of like, I don't understand what's going on here. And it's often because of everything we're speaking about, where it's been like focusing on growth at all costs, focusing on scaling at all costs, focusing on bigger is better at all costs, instead of, there's nothing wrong with bigger. There's nothing wrong with fast growth, but fast growth does come with its own challenges. And so if we're not really mindful of that and managing those challenges and being mindful of, focusing on what comes up during that time, it in many ways can bite you in the butt. And this is where I've had people hire me with very large audiences or businesses that were really big and then kind of busted and they weren't sure what happened. This is oftentimes what has happened. So again, this is not to scare you off of scaling at all or to scale you off of fast or big growth, but this is just to help you have a different perspective, because what I see is so often, if you're a small business owner with a smaller audience and a high ticket offer and you're selling really effectively, I think our brain thinks, I know because I fall into this trap before, right? I need to hurry up and scale. Like, that's how I'm successful. I need to hurry up and do what those other people are doing. And what I often want to remind clients and what I want to remind you is, so often you are sitting on a gold mine. And if you can see that bigger isn't always better, and there's so much power in small and doing small really well, and knowing that you're going to grow with that. We're, again, not against growth, but if you can make that right and really lean into that, that's also how you then end up having that 6 or multi-6 or 7-figure business. It's when we think there's something wrong with that, right? And we need to grow bigger or faster, right? We start to ruin the really beautiful, sustainable, scalable, profitable business because we think we need this other thing, when the irony is this other thing that we're chasing is the very thing that will destroy what's so good that we have. Hey, Terry, nice to have you on. Chrissy says no questions, but loving the conversation. Thank you for both being here. Thank you for the reflection as well. I appreciate that. So again, just to put a pin into that, I want to be so mindful here, again, because I'm not coaching everyone one-on-one. Please don't walk away from this conversation thinking that means if you grow a big audience, that's wrong or bad. At this point, there's 17,000 people in this group. And I mean, that's with us. We delete, or we don't admit more people than we let into this group. And we still have a pretty big group. I have a decent sized audience, right? Like, across platforms, I have a pretty big audience now, right? Like, that's not wrong or bad. It is good to always continue to grow your audience. We always want to increase our reach. It's not like we always want to look at how can we grow and scale. Though in Company of One, he does talk about having a scaling cap, and I think that's a really interesting concept. But that's a conversation for another live stream. So I don't want to demonize. I don't want this to be like, well, this is better than that, or we shouldn't focus on audience growth conversation. But I do want us to see it's really what our intentionality is, knowing what our goals are, knowing what's working in our business, and being really mindful when we're seeing these shiny objects or seeing these other things, not to take what is actually something that can set you up for massive success and profitability. That client who's making $1 million, by the way, because they have a small audience, I think they're one of the most profitable $1 million businesses out there, because most $1 million businesses, right, have big audiences and a lot of ad spend, and right? And I know my business is taking home far more than most $1 million companies, right? Like it's so easy for us to miss those nuances. So I want you to see one is not better than the other, but to be really mindful of making what is working in your business wrong and to focus on what your business model is, what gets you what you want, and how do you really grow that, and what is the pace that actually makes sense. Faster and bigger are not always better. Okay, last thought here for you. But again, if you have questions, reflections, throw them at me. I did want to close on with that in mind because I don't want anyone walking away from this conversation thinking like, well, screw audience growth, like that's stupid, or I don't want a viral reel, or I don't want to bring new people into my world. There are times we want to focus on audience growth. There are times we want to make sure that's really important so we don't slow down sales and so we don't slow down growth. So this conversation is not don't focus on audience growth. This conversation is understand what your business needs. And going back to I'm going to keep bringing up Natalie Ellis here. This is like the biggest promotion for Boss Babe ever in this live stream. But I'm sure her audience growth was still significant. When she said I'd half the leads and made double the revenue in this launch, I'm just knowing the size of her audience, I'm sure that was still a significant number of leads. And that was still focusing on audience growth, right? It was just, she really focused on what we talked about in the beginning of the conversation. I'm assuming, I don't know what she focused on, but bringing in the right leads, knowing how to warm them up, and really being focused and drilled in on that conversion tool or event or process so that they could have half the leads, but like better quality leads than double the leads that were kind of lukewarm quality and turn that into double the revenue. But she still had to focus on bringing in leads. And so what I want us to think about is, I would say your job is kind of all like if you have a small business, if you have a small one-on-one practice like me, when you're getting fully booked for the first time, your focus is on audience growth, your focus is sales. Once you're fully booked, I would say your focus is continuing to fill your pipeline, right? And for that to continue to happen, we have to keep getting in front of more and more people. And so your focus might not be massive audience growth, but you want to always be paying attention to how am I making sure I'm getting in front of new people and keeping my pipeline full. Now, if we have kind of what we were talking about at the beginning of the conversation, if you have an offer or you're scaling into an offer that's going to be one-to-many, right? And you have more capacity that you need to serve, and you have more capacity than maybe you have demand for right now, that's when we're going to want to start to really focus on audience growth. I often say, this is like a whole nother conversation, but I often give some loving pushback to clients who want to scale into one-to-many offers before they have the demand for them. Because when we're scaling, I always say this, but scaling is solving a capacity problem. If you're scaling with a one-to-many offer, right, we're doing that because we're already at capacity and we have so much demand and we don't have something to sell people. So usually when you're ready to sell something like that, you don't actually have an audience problem because you have the demand there. But if we're selling something one-to-many and we're scaling with that, especially if you're selling something that doesn't have reoccurring revenue, like a course, or you are selling into a one-to-many, a mastermind, a group program, but you don't have the demand, you don't have the audience size, where if we look at what are industry standards in terms of how many people are going to sign up for your conversion event, how many people are going to show up, how many people are going to convert and sell into that, how many people do you convert into that? If you don't have the numbers for that, then yes, of course, it makes sense that part of your job then is to focus on audience growth. But depending on your offer, depends on how much audience you really need. If you have a small mastermind, right, it might be going back to the Natalie Ellis, we just got to focus on bringing in a few people into your audience that are those really right people, you know how to warm up and you know how to convert. If you're selling something like a membership, or if you're selling something like a course, that is something where your job turns into full-time audience growth, but I would still be focusing on the same things we talked about today in terms of how to turn a small audience into 6 or 7 figures. I would just be focusing on doing that at scale. It's just going to be a different strategy, but I want you to hear, like, we still want to remember that we have to bring people through your customer journey, whatever it is you're selling. So again, this conversation is don't focus on audience growth. It's just focusing on to what degree, to what capacity, to what strategy you're really focusing on. And again, this is maybe just another piece here. This last piece I'll close with. But one of my clients is a blogger, so she monetizes all from traffic essentially. If I think about what we're focusing on strategically in terms of traffic and audience versus one of my clients who is a multi-six-figure business owner with an audience of less than 500 people who sells only one-on-one, they're both looking at how do we bring people, like grow our audience? How do we bring people through our funnel, right? How do we bring in the right people? How do we warm them up? How do we convert them? But the top of funnel strategy is completely different because they have two different goals and they're selling two different things. And so I just to kind of close with that, even if you're getting to a place where audience growth is the goal for you, I just want you to be mindful when you're looking at what are other people doing, to be so mindful of just mimicking, just copying a strategy, because it doesn't mean a strategy is wrong or bad, but usually it's because that if someone's getting really big results, it's because it's really specific to what they're selling, to what their sales goals are, to what they really need to make that strategy work for them. And unless you have like literally the same business, and even then you probably have a different audience, right? That's where we just really get ourselves into hot water. Okay. I hope this was valuable for you. I feel like I got on a bit of a soapbox around this, but I clearly feel strongly about this. I'm just seeing if I had any other notes with this. I feel like these were the main things I wanted to say. If you have questions on the replay, drop them for me now or on the replay. The other thing that I have that's exciting, I just feel like I saw Akasha. No, okay, that's weird. I thought I saw a comment pop up. If I missed it, just drop it again for me. The other exciting thing I have to share is I officially have a one-on-one 6-month spot open. So I know I often have intensives that we open up, or we have one-on-one spots that open up from time to time when clients finish, but usually those get filled with my waitlist people. But summer's over. I've been doing a Flex Friday where I've been taking Fridays off from client calls, and it's been lovely, but I honestly love working with clients more. So I've opened up my Fridays to one-on-one clients. We filled a couple of those with my waitlist people, but I'm going to open up one more 6-month spot for someone who is looking for that ongoing support to grow and scale your business with reoccurring 10K, 20K, up to 100K months. I work with business owners who are brand new to business, where it's like you've never booked a single client before, up to clients who are making $2 million per year and have large teams, and kind of everywhere in between. I'm really excellent at helping you understand what's going on in your business, understand how to think like a CEO, understand how to strategically make that plan for you to create that reoccurring revenue, and understand the right problems to solve, the right gaps to close, because every business is so different. I'm behind the scenes in businesses all day long that are vastly different. So I'm really great at knowing, yeah, that's great that you heard that. That works for so-and-so, but that is just so not something you need to think about. I have a client right now. Literally, I gave this as an example. Last week, I had 2 client calls back to back. One client, I suggested to double down on Reels. One client, I suggested to not touch Reels and to stay off Instagram. Both clients are getting great results. Both clients are, one's this close to their first 6-figure, like reoccurring months to bring them to 6 figures. The other client has been making consistent 12K, 15K cash months, and they started with me making $500 per month. So just to give an example there, I'm really excellent with that. I love to partner with my clients. I go really hands-on, really deep, and I'm looking for one person who's looking for that kind of support, who wants me to be all in with you, map out that plan, be there to problem solve, hold you in it, hold you in all the fun stuff that our brain kicks up, and to partner with you. I also have a client going on maternity leave in October through the end of the year, so I will open up one additional one-on-one spot in October. So if this is calling to you, again, that's one spot on this month, and then we'll have one next month. I will drop a discovery call link. You can book a free call with me. We will chat through that. It's incredibly important for me, and I want to make sure that I am the right match for you, especially if we're going to partner for 6 months. Most of my clients work with me for years and years, so I do want to make sure that I can really dive in with you and that I know how to help you get results. That's important to me. So please take me up on that call. And 2 things there. If you're not ready for ongoing, obviously we can do an intensive instead. It's not like those are going away, but I just don't usually have the one-on-one spots so available. And this does not mean you have to have your sessions on a Friday. I just opened up that availability on my calendar. I wanted to have a little less availability over the summer to see what that felt like. So you do not have to have your sessions on Friday if you're hearing that, but it does mean I have that availability for you. And I'm really excited to meet whoever I get to support and partner with long-term next to help you get on the path to making those 6 and 7 figures. This feels important to say if you're newer to my world as well. I've had 30 clients that I have a very small one-on-one roster of 20 to 25 clients at any given time. Most of them renew with me, so we don't have a lot of turnover. 30 of my clients have made their 10K months. 16 clients, we might have 17 now, have made their first 6-figure year. Many have made multi 6 figures. 3 of my clients I've supported from early stages in business to $1 million plus. So Just to give you an example there, I obviously cannot guarantee results. That would be so out of integrity, but I'm really good at what I do. I know what I'm doing. And again, I'm looking for the right person to partner with that I can support and help take you to where you want to go in your business. All right. I love you all so much. I'm going to go now because I do have a client call coming up, and I will see you all next week. Bye.